I am here for Upstate Films. I'm Thelma Adams, and I'm a film critic who lives nearby in Hyde Park. And today we have another Upstater here, Patrick Harrison, who is an old friend of mine and is from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. He is the director of membership and of New York programming, and I have been happy that, the Academy has really expanded their programming in the past couple of years.
Right, absolutely. Hello, everyone. I'm here. I'm an Upstate resident. I live nearby in Accord, New York, and it's really terrific to be here with you today. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm very happy to have you because we have to support our local institutions.
Absolutely.
And both of us, going back, we were both raised in California, that those theaters for us were places we went to see the rest of the world.
Right. Right. I remember, I started a little bit probably in the drive-in theater world. I was young in those days.
Right.
My parents had, the big station wagon and piled the kids in the back and said, "You kids go to sleep while we watch films." No such luck.
And and this was in Stockton.
It was in Stockton, California.
Was it the Stockton Drive-In?
It was the West Lane Drive-In at the corner of West Lane and Hammer Lane. And it was this big corner lot. And you would drive in and we'd watch, during the heyday of, I guess, the blaxploitation films, because we saw a lot of Buck and the Preacher, and, we saw films with Pam Grier, and so those are the films that my parents watched. That was my early introduction into watching film. And watching it with the family and watching it with group. But no, we never went to sleep.
And we never, actually I think I probably did. But
we didn't go to sleep.
I think, I can't even remember like it was Los Angeles when we first went to drive-ins. And I might have seen The Unsinkable Molly Brown or
right.
How the West Was Won,
Right.
either at the Cinerama or at the drive-in. Mm-hmm. And they had places where you could play beforehand. So your parents would get there early. And they had like swing sets and stuff up by the screen.
Oh, you were fancy. No. That was a fancy experience.
No, it was the one place that justified the fact that my mother always brought food from home, because we were in the car, so it was okay.
It was okay, right?
When we went on to other theaters, and she would like pull the stuff out, right. From her purse.
So that's where it starts.
That's
where it starts. I remember from drive-in theaters, just to kind of continue that, is as I'm talking to you right now, I am actually smelling and my taste buds are remembering the concession stand pizza. I don't know why that's coming up right now, but my taste buds are remembering the concession stand pizza. So good, so fantastic. And we would, go in the theater. We had our blankets and our pillows, and Dad would push a mattress in the back of the station wagon, and we'd watch and then go home and go to sleep. And next week we go see something else.
And it was inexpensive,
which
is a big advantage.
Right.
And then you also have experience in Stockton. Your first theater was
the Stockton Royal.
The Stockton Royal,
had our
which was not an art house theater, but it was what?
It was the place. Stockton was a small town, and it was, I guess, it was the only theater in town, and it was one of those big old, beautiful, majestic
palaces.
theater palace,
movie palaces.
Movie palaces. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm looking for. Thank you. Big old movie palace, and so that was the only theater in town until probably the late '70s, and then there was the first multiplex came in. But I saw Jaws at the Stockton Royal. I saw all the Disney classics at the Stockton Royal.
Would your parents just drop you off, like drop the kids off, and then?
Yes, it was matinee started at noon. So parents would, bring all the kids and say, "Okay, we'll see you later." And, ticket price was $1.
Really?
And I don't want to admit this, but we saw more than one film a day sometimes. And we definitely saw the film twice.
Yeah.
Like I sat through, let's say I sat through, Jaws 3 times in one day. Because it was just so much fun. And we could do that. You could stay. Now they empty the theaters.
Right.
To let it, but in those days you stayed and watched it a second time.
I'm curious because Stockton, Stockton is a small town. Now, then you went to Los Angeles and then you went on to New York. But as someone from Stockton, or in my case, as someone from San Diego, I remember that the movies were my lifeline to a bigger America and a bigger world.
Sure.
Do you feel
Absolutely.
that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I thought, you know, when I graduated high school, you know, like every 17-year-old thinks, or 17, 18-year-old think knows everything about the world.
You did.
I saw everything that I needed to know about the world on the movie screen.
Right.
And when I got to Los Angeles and started college and just started seeing more of the world opened up. And that's when I started seeing foreign language film. I was like, foreign language film? I didn't know this was available to us.
And did you have any problems with watching with subtitles?
No, not at all.
Because I kind of never understand that, but.
No, I never had a problem. And you know, the film that comes up for me right now that sticks in my mind still, and I just saw it recently, was Diva. Do you remember Diva?
I do.
I loved Diva. You know, you had this really beautiful black opera singer embroiled in this whole, you know, murder mystery or this mystery. And in those days, you know, you know, we had Leontine Price and we had Jesse Norman.
Right.
But there weren't any other people of color singing opera that I knew of.
Right.
So it was like a revelation. And that was a really exciting revelation to see this beautiful, beautiful woman is singing these wonderful arias. And that also got me interested in opera and developing a taste for opera.
And do you still have that?
Sure, sure.
Which is another thing you can't do in the in the privacy of your home.
Right.
Like opera is really something that you need to go to the theater.
You need to go to the theater, and you need to have that collective experience with an audience, and hearing that fat lady sing. You know, you need to hear it and see it,
and you need to feel it.
And you need to feel it. And film does the same thing. Film does the same thing.
Because we were talking about that earlier. I'm just curious. I mean, we're such movie people. How many times have we sat in rows of movies in Toronto? And you've gone to Cannes. I'm not a Cannes person, but Toronto, Berlin, Sundance, Park City, all of these places where so many people come together from the industry. And now all those people who shared seats with us, like it's strange to see that unravel.
Right. It has been a shock to the system, I would say, because that experience was so great, sitting in a theater with other industry professionals, and seeing a story unfold on the big screen. And the interesting thing also is that everyone leaves it with a different experience. Like my experience of this film was very different than maybe your experience of the film. But the fact that we could sit there together in a row and see something.
Sharing sodas.
Or not.
Well,
or not.
That's a past thing.
That's a past tense.
Not happening again. But yeah, I mean, the last movie I saw, because I was at the Berlin Film Festival, which is in February. And so I came back from Berlin, you know, obviously COVID had already started.
Right.
But I was thinking today, you know, when they talk about Oscar movies of this year, of 2020, it really, like, the season really hardly started. And the best thing, one of the best movies I saw was an artistic documentary about a pig called Gunda. And the whole movie is about this pig, this sow, giving birth. She's already had the kids, and then like life in the barnyard. Oh, wow. It's a very dark European version.
Oh my goodness!
But I came out of it and said, "Oh, that is about motherhood." You know, that movie is. And then there were people who were like, "No, that movie, Joaquin Phoenix is behind it. That's about being vegan." And you know, we just sat and watched the same movie about a pig.
Right.
So, one thing I miss and that I love is that feeling of community, and also of, you know, talking to people about why they love a movie, why they didn't.
Right, and it's the whole debate of it too. You know, I mean, you came out of that film saying it's about motherhood, and someone else came out and said, no, it's about veganism. It's like, well, let's have that conversation.
Right,
and that's what you get when you watch a film with an audience.
Right.
And that's why theaters are so important, and that's why theaters are so fantastic.
So important. And there's now so much you can watch from home, and that the whole movement towards streaming had already been racing forward, and then now we're in a position. Can you talk about how, you know,
It's
as my husband said, we'll see.
we'll
And-
see.
Yeah.
Right, right. I think it's definitely a we'll see. But I'll tell you something. Just by virtue of our conversation, where we're sitting, I am hopeful that this can return, that this experience can return, where people can come into a building and watch a film together and experience it together. I want everyone to be successful.
Right. I don't want
I want
it
the
to be an
studios to
either
make
or,
money.
right.
I want the theaters to make money. I want everyone to make money. And I want the public to have that, because as convenient as streaming is quite convenient.
Right.
But we as human beings, we need to have that kind of connect. We need to have connection. And
Well, it's
I
an
hope
event,
that it
yeah.
all comes. I hope it all comes back. I think it will come back differently, but I hope it comes back stronger. That's
would
my
be-
hope, that it comes back stronger.
So what would be an example of that? What would be, at
Packed houses.
packed houses.
Packed houses
and then
where-
people going, I mean, this is the perfect place to see a movie.
Right.
It's Upstate Films, then you can just walk to any one of bars, restaurants that are right here, and you're kind of spreading the wealth, sharing the wealth.
Now, another thing too, that you're absolutely right. And the other thing too is opening the aperture of how we view cinema. So meaning, you see the blockbuster films with packed houses, but I want to see the independents and the foreign language films and on the experimental films and the documentary films. I want to have an audience for those as well, so that what I hope to do, and my goal, and I think the Academy's goal, is to help people view films with a bigger aperture. And that's really comes down to education too, educating the public on what to look for and what kind of films to look at.
Do you think the success, I mean, we were going in a certain direction, so the success of a Parasite or the previous year Roma, where people seem to be, one of the positive impacts of globalization was this recognizing that there are so many fantastic stories also in other languages,
Right.
and bringing them back into mainstream theaters or back into the theatrical experience as it was when we were growing up.
And you said the magic word, story. It all comes down to story, and and connecting people, and people connecting with it. Because, for instance, with Roma and with Parasite, those are universal stories
Right.
in many ways.
Right, they were.
So I think that the viewing public could connect to it, and even though it was in another language, that story resonated in such a
Right.
powerful way that that the voting members of the Academy and other voters and other organizations, honored it.
Right.
But also, I think the general public
Connected.
honored it as well and connected with it. And it's always about story. That's.
I'm as a critic, I've always been a story-driven, like the first thing, do the characters work as they're written on the page?
Right.
Does the story work? Is the first half, do all of the acts pay off?
Right.
Again, like if you did an example, if you said Parasite, one of the things about Parasite and story is that every time you think you know what the story is, it twists and moves, but it builds and brings you along. And the other building block is the way that the characters are all very clearly defined. You know everybody. They're each given their moment of light. So when they're endangered, you really feel for them.
Right.
So that's the kind of thing as a critic that I look for. Now, so we're in this we'll see moment.
Right.
You've been with the Academy.
I've been with the Academy now. Oh,
20
goodness.
years.
About 20 years. Yes. Yes.
This time around.
Yeah, this time. I'm so glad you said that, because when I lived in Los Angeles after college, I started at the Academy, and I was one of those. Back in the day, you could start in the mailroom. Moved into a clerk position in membership department. Started working in the membership department. Moving forms and filing papers and things like that. And then I got a position working with one of the executives as his assistant. And that took me out of the clerk place and into an assistant position.
Right. And so you had a view of the whole organization.
Then I had a view of the organization, had to look at it. And then I ended up leaving the Academy and moved to New York.
What,
'Cause I wanted
what
to-
drove that?
I wanted a
The
different,
desire?
I wanted a different experience. I was young. I wanted a different experience. I
Right.
wanted to see what more the world had to offer.
And do you think New York film, I mean, New York film, LA film, two separate beasts in a lot of ways,
In
yes?
a lot, yeah, in a lot of ways. Los Angeles, it was very much like, the big studios. But in New York, that's when I started really understanding independent cinema, and that's when I started understanding the work of Miramax. And I ended up getting a job at Miramax, actually, and I worked in their awards department. So I was one of those awards. I was an awards.
Oh, so your
campaigner.
roots are in the awards campaign.
Yes.
And that made the transition into the awards position
awards.
that you have.
Right. And so I worked there for several years, and then the Academy, talked to the Academy, and they said, "Oh, we'd like someone to run our New York office." And I said, "Sign me up." And it's been really terrific because I'm still learning. One thing that you said earlier that kind of made me remember, one thing I love about what I do, and I guess you probably may feel the same way, is every day is a new experience.
Right.
There's always a filmmaker I've never met.
Right.
There's always a story I haven't heard before. There's always something in either the look of the film, whether it's the cinematography or the production design or the sound or editing, or something that I did not know before. And so talking to these filmmakers,
Right.
it's just as exciting talking to the director as it is talking to the sound guy,
Right.
as it is talking to the production designer.
And
or
it's
even-
important to note that also you're part of, that the Academy in New York now has a very strong program of Q&As.
Yes.
Is it all through the year, or is it just during the Academy season?
We do post-screening conversations after every screening, if subject to availability, obviously. But yeah, we do these conversations year-round, and it's really great. I mean, we have the writer, director, actors, cinematographers come up and talk about their craft and how they are storytellers, because all of them are storytellers.
Well, let's just, I love talking to you, and we could go on forever, and talk about all of the movies that have excited us.
Right.
I just, what is our happy ending in the more conventional sense? What do we, if we look forward, I would like to see us really back in the theaters,
Yeah.
really connecting. And I think talking to you, that when we were young, theaters were a way to really connect, and also a way to connect with the world, to get an independent way, to leave our parents at home ultimately, to figure out who our friends were,
Right.
to figure out what we liked through our friends, or what friends we liked because of what we watched together.
Right.
And I think that experience, beyond the texting each other that, I see my children do, that experience is still potent.
I agree with you 100%. And what I would like to see, I'd like to see theaters open. I'd like to see full houses. I'd like to see that aperture open of how we view films. And also, I'd like to see different voices, have different voices, tell their story.
Right.
And I am hopeful that we can get all of that, and then that will ultimately connect us all as a human body. That's ultimately what
That's
I
the
would
goal.
love to, that's the goal, to connect us all. I have everything in common with someone who lives in Europe as I do with someone who lives in Africa, as someone who lives in Hawaii,
Right.
or even around the corner from my apartment.
Right. Or here in Upstate.
Or here in Upstate.
So thank you very much for coming to talk to us.
Thank you for having
and
me.
we hope that you return.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Patrick.